Hello, today I'd like to show you how I go about making a pillowcase. Just a regular pillowcase for a pillow that you might use on a bed. I used to make pillowcases for my children, and now I've got grandchildren coming along. I guess I'll be making them for them too. It's so nice to be able to make them out of fun fabrics, and I've got one that I've made here using a very nice little owl fabric. Owls, I know, don't really sleep at night, so it could be a little bit of a problem. We don't want to make it out of a fabric that's going to keep the child awake. But anyway, they don't have to be for children, of course, but this one that I've done here is probably for a child or somebody who really just likes owls. So it takes quite a lot of fabric, and what I've got inside here is a really nice turn back so that when it's on the pillow it stays snugly on there. And then on the front bit here I've just got like a little strip here that I've sewn that's actually got a raw edge in it, so everything's really nice and neat and tidy. So to start with, you need to have 1 1/8 yards of fabric, or a metre, and that will use pretty much most of the fabric. There's just a little bit that we chop off at the ends. So I'll quickly show you how I cut that to start with. So I've got here my 1 1/8 yards, or a metre of fabric, and I folded it with the selvages together in half, and then I folded that over again so that the selvages come to that fold. So I've got 4 layers of fabric there, and I've lined it up with the markings on my board so everything's sitting nice and straight. When you fold it over 4 times, you need to make sure that everything stays nice and straight. Now I'm going to trim just this little raw edge off, just the merest little bit, just to make sure it's all nice and straight at the end. And I'm going to use the markings on my board to help me measure. So we've got the full width of fabric here, and I'm going to cut a piece off that's 19.5 inches. So using these markings on the board, I'm going to come along and cut at 19.5. That'll be for either the front or the back of the pillowcase, and the other piece is the same size. This one also needs to be 19.5, and you can see that just gets very nicely just out of that amount of fabric. And so now I've got 2 strips that are full width of the fabric, 19.5 inches long, wide, I guess. The fabric's wide. So now I need to trim the length. So this time, because I'm using a shorter ruler, I probably could do it the full width, but I tend to work with a shorter ruler, so I will fold that in half again, the other way this time, so that I've got my selvages at each end of the fabric. And I'm going to line that up again with a line on the board, and I'm going to just trim off the selvages. It's always a good idea to take the selvages off because they can shrink in the wash and cause other sorts of problems. And now I'm going to come along. This is going to be the front of my pillowcase, and I'm going to cut this one at 33 inches. So because I've got a nice big board, I can come all the way along to 33. If you've got a shorter board, you could fold this over again and cut it at maybe 16.5, cut it in half. But anyway, because I've got the full board, I'm going to go to 33 inches and cut that off. So now this piece here we won't need. That's extra. That could go in the next quilt. So that's the front. And now while we're doing this bit of cutting, we'll cut for the back as well. The back is a slightly different length because of that long turnover that goes into the pillow. Again, fold it in half along the length and trim off those selvages. I just thought it might help you because it's quite large pieces and sometimes we're not sure how to cut them. But it's really quite simple if you keep everything straight and folded. Okay, this one is the back, and we're going to cut this one at 36 inches, which is the full length of my board. Or if you have to fold it in half, it would be at 18 inches. So we'll just go along there at 36 inches, and again, we don't now need this piece, another piece for the next quilt. So this is the back. So we might get the back prepared now while we're here with this. So I'm just going to bring over a little temporary ironing pad that I've got here that's wide enough for my pillowcase. And at one of the shorter sides now, I'm just going to fold that. I have to keep this up the right way. I hope it's not going to be upside down. Let me think about that. Okay, we're going to fold over one of the shorter edges just 1/2 inch. I've got my iron here, and then we're going to fold it 1/2 inch and then again, so that we can just sew a nice little hem on that. That's my first fold pressed, and now the second one over. So just press that, and then I'm going to go to the sewing machine and quickly sew that. So just sewing, you're just sewing that down to form a hem, and just with a straight stitch and fairly close to the fold that you folded over there. So that's pretty good. That's the back ready to go. Now we'll work on the front. Now the front, because it's got that little turn back bit, that did you see that when we were doing this? We've got a nice little sort of little pleated bit in here, and so when I folded this over, that the raw edge from that piece that was folded over is actually caught up in this seam that we're going to sew here. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but you'll see what I'm doing as I do it. So this is the front. So what I'm going to do is turn my edge. Now I just need to do a little bit of measuring for this. I want to fold it in 4.5 inches. So I'm going to grab a couple of pins, and again I'm using the measurements on my board. I love the measurements on my board. They help me do so many things. So I'm going to come down 4.5 inches from this edge. So I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Pop a pin in there, and the same at the other end, keeping it nice and straight. So 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And so I want to actually fold that over at that stage. So I'm going to bring my little ironing mat back, and because I've got a pin at both ends, that should sit nice and straight there, and I want to press that fold. So that's now the open edge of the pillowcase. And now what I want to do is another fold where that at the line at the line where that piece of fabric comes up to. So you can probably do it by feel. You can pop another couple of pins in if you need to. So you want that to fold so that the edge of that fabric sits right at the fold line if possible. That's all for, and again we're going to press that. And so now I'm going to take that to the sewing machine. So what we've got here is the front of our pillowcase with a nice flat folded right over, and we're going to do some sewing, but we're sewing on this edge, not the edge in here, this edge out here, and just 1/4 inch or ever so slightly more than 1/4 inch. But just so that we're enclosing that fold with that other piece of fabric in there with the raw edges inside. So I'm just going to come along here, so just about 1/4 inch away from the folded edge. That bit done, so we'll just give that another quick press so that it's sitting nice and flat. So what we've got is this sewn bit here, but in actual fact we're wanting to open that back out again now, and you can see on the back that that is actually enclosed in that seam, that edge, so it's all nice and neat and tidy. So it doesn't really show as a little tuck on a fabric that's as busy as this one, but if you had a plainer fabric it would look very smart to have this little bit pleated over there. So I'll just quickly press it from both sides this time. And so that's the front made and the back's made. Now we've just got to put them together. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so now what we do is lay them right sides together. So your nice finished edge of your front, it's on my right, and I want the finished edge of my back also at that end, but it's going to extend beyond. So we're going to pop these right sides together, and we're going to match the other end that hasn't yet had any attention paid to it. And you could pop a couple of pins in there if you'd like to, just to hold it. So you want to match those ends up nicely. And then we're going to come, keeping your edges nicely together. It might be easier at this stage to turn it over so that the back's on the underside. So you want to make sure your edges are sitting well together. Bring this up, and then this back that's now extending beyond here, you want to fold that right over, and this pin that was still floating here can go in there. A couple more pins. And I'm using pins today. Don't really like pins, they don't like me. We're making friends today. And the same thing on this side. You want that to fold so right on that fold of the front piece. You want it to fold right over at that point. The pin can come down here. And if just pinning those other little ends in place just helps everything sit nicely. So now I'm going to go with my 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around 3 sides. Don't sew across this side and it'll never get into your pillowcase. So I'm back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew around again just that 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the 3 sides, coming up to the other side there. So just make sure that everything is sitting nicely and that you include all layers at this stage. Doesn't take long to make a pillowcase like this. It's great. They make great gifts, make a nice little extra on a bed. Sometimes the child just needs a gift or an extra little bit of comfort or a bit of fun. As I said, though, not something that's going to keep them awake at night. Okay, all the way down to your corners, pivot at your corner, go across the bottom. Here I am nearly at the end. I've gone around my 3 sides. I'm just in that last bit, coming onto the several layers of fabric together here for the end. Just a little lock off there. So what we've got at the moment is a strange looking pillowcase because it kind of looks like you can't get into it. But I'm actually going to neaten those edges. If you've got an overlocker, now would be a good time to use it, because I don't really want all this sort of fraying going on. So I'm going to pop my machine onto a zigzag stitch and run it so that the zigzag is going over the raw edges there, and that just helps stop it unravelling or fraying in the wash and things like that. So again, I'm just going to go all the way around with my zigzag stitch. So most of the stitch is on the fabric in the seam allowance. So I will do all 3 sides just the same as I did with the straight stitch. So here I am finishing up my zigzagging row. Just about done. As I said, if you have an overlocker, that would do a really good job on this, but my overlocker is not in the least bit handy just now, so we won't do that. Okay, so now I've finished all the sewing, everything's enclosed, it's all looking nice. So now what we do is we fold this back, so we want to pop this corner through, and the same with this corner, pop that one through, and so that's the flap that's going to cover over the pillow end. And now we can turn the pillowcase out the right way. So we've got these corners, you want to push them out. Probably needs a good press, but other than that, you're all done. That wasn't so painful. So there it is, one pillowcase. It's got a very nicely neatened front edge there. The pillow is going to tuck nicely under under there, and I've got one on a pillow behind me, which I'll show you quickly as well. So that's the pillowcase all done. Just keep an eye out if you've got a one-way fabric like I have, that you're keeping them going the same way. You don't want the owls to be upside down necessarily, because they probably don't sleep so well like that. And I've got one of the pillowcases that I've made here, which I've just done very slightly differently because I've put a border print along one edge. So I've actually made a slightly smaller turn back here, but I've appliqued a border along there. So that was just another little idea for a pillowcase. And you can see that that tucks nicely into, there's a good overlap there so that the pillow won't work its way out of the pillowcase. So I just think that that's a really nice idea for a pillowcase. Great way for using up some delicious fabrics. They can be plainer fabrics for the border, or you can do something that's a little bit busier, or you could do some really special pillowcases. It's just the same with some nice linen fabrics or satin, whatever it is that you like for pillowcases. So I just thought I would show you how I go about making pillowcases.